I come across a lot of horses in Photo Finish Live Marketplace that seem to be performing well below their preference star levels. And I started wondering, why is that? So I went digging. Hi, I'm Jeffo, also known as Digital Romad on Twitter, and this is my video on right place, wrong race, dissecting race types to find the prototype race for your horse. Now, what I'm about to show you is useful, particularly when you are shopping for horses, because it allows you to pull apart races in a different way to really hone in on a particular race, a particular style of race that a horse is good at, that it excels at. And that can be quite useful when you're shopping for a horse because it allows you to potentially find a horse that is undervalued, that is mispriced relative to its real strengths. Could be that a seller doesn't understand those strengths, been racing it all over the place and hasn't found that horse's niche, or theoretically hasn't found that horse's niche, even though that niche is right there in plain sight. If you can find that, you can exploit it to your benefit, buy a really good racehorse at a relatively cheap price, and begin racing it in that prototype race and start putting that horse on the podium more often than his statistics would otherwise indicate he should be. So I'm going to start with a horse I'm calling Racer X. This is a real horse. I've blacked out his name as well as the stable because I'm not here to point fingers or make any stable or any particular horse look bad. That's not the point here. It really is just an educational series to show how I go about thinking about these horses and their statistics, and hopefully help you begin to think about them a little differently as well. This is Racer X. He's a 3-year-old colt. And he is a B-plus horse, as you can see. And what's really interesting is he has the best possible preference ratings there are. He has 3 stars across the field. So this is a 9-star horse, which is a good horse. I mean, it's a horse anybody would want to own. But first impressions are that he's only been to the podium 7 times in 20 appearances, which you sort of have to ask why. I mean, why is there a 9-star horse that is relatively struggling here? I mean, he's only been there, 7 times out of 20, as I said. I would expect to see a lot more for a horse of theoretically this caliber. And so, it raises the question to me, what is hiding here? Where is this horse? Does this horse have a strength? And if he does, where is that strength hiding? Where can I find success in this horse? And once I pulled it apart, and I'm sort of giving away the answer here, once I pulled this horse apart and his races apart, it turns out that success hides in the micro details of race analysis. And by that I mean finding and running in exactly the right race. And you find that by really pulling apart details at a micro level. So this is the usual numbers when you look at Racer X. This is my initial sort, as I always talk about. I sort by the finish position because I want to know where this horse has won. What does his wins look like? And for this horse, it's pretty clear that all of his wins have come at relatively short distances, 4, 5, and 6 furlongs. All of them been on the left turning tracks, all of them been on the dirt, and all of them have been in yielding through sloppy conditions. So that's sort of the initial path. That's my initial take on this horse, is that we have a short distance runner who likes left turns in the dirt and in less than ideal conditions, or neutral conditions at best. But that said, he clearly loses quite a bit in those same conditions. Clearly, he's not a long-distance horse. Anything beyond about 6 furlongs, he's failed at. Obviously, 8 and 10, you can see he's failed at. But he's also failed a lot of 5 and 4 furlong races and a couple of 6s in there as well. So your initial reaction, well, okay, I mean, he's a short-distance runner sometimes, but a lot of the times he's a no-distance runner. He doesn't win anywhere. So this might be a horse you would potentially pass on. And I've circled this down here just to show that the owner has spent about 22,000 Derby almost, and he's won back about 13,300. So he's negative about 8,400 Derby at this point with this particular horse. And again, I understand why this horse is up for sale. And last I looked, he was still up for sale. And that may have changed by the time you see this video. But I understand why he's up for sale, because looking at this initial set of numbers, you're like, he's a middling horse and he hasn't done anything for me basically except lose Derby. So, maybe it's time to put him up for sale and move on. Clearly, this horse does not like fast and good conditions. He really is a horse that runs best in neutral to bad conditions, effectively, which would effectively, replicate his style. I mean, this is what this horse is good at theoretically, based on his preference stars. He's good at left, he's good at dirt, and he's good on soft conditions. And you're seeing that in this chart. I mean, you can see that he's good at left, good at dirt, and good in soft, sloppy conditions. So he's living up to his expectations in terms of preferences, but he's not actually landing on the podium enough to make me think this is a good horse. Instead, he's landing on the podium so infrequently relative to his strengths that it makes me think that he's probably being run in the wrong races, which we're going to see in just a moment. Again, usual numbers kind of stuff. I sort by race details, and as I mentioned in a previous video, this is a homegrown column. I go through every single race that a horse runs, and I annotate exactly what kind of race that is, meaning, is it an allowance B grade race? Is it a juvenile maiden race? Is it a stakes race? Whatever it is, I put it in here because I want to know the exact race details, the exact race types that this horse is running and winning at and losing at. And I don't just want to know it was an allowance race or it was a stakes race or it was a maiden race. I want to know the exact kind of allowance race and the exact kind of stakes race, so I can make even more informed decisions about whether to buy a horse like this, or more importantly, when I own a horse, where I should really be running that horse in terms of the races I choose for him. Here, I mean, these race details are relatively all over the map. You might hone in on it and say, okay, he's probably a stakes horse, so I would sort of focus my efforts there. Clearly, he's not a claiming horse, and once you've done something with maiden, that's sort of over. So I'm not really looking to maiden information. He's run 2 allowance races. That's not necessarily enough to build much of a study on. So for me, he's probably a stakes horse. But I'm going to start pulling across these numbers in an unusual way. I'm not going to go with the usual numbers now. I'm going to make them the unusual numbers. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through and say, okay, I'm going to highlight all his stakes races, and I'm going to look for the true stakes races that he should be running. And clearly, I'm going to axe the 10 furlong. We already know that this is a horse that does not run at distance, so there's no reason to include a 10 furlong race in the analysis, because I'm never going to run him at 10 furlongs, so I really don't care about it. By the same token, I'm going to scratch the stakes A plus and the stakes A races. This is a B plus horse, and he does not race at high stakes levels. Some B plus horses absolutely can. I've seen B pluses beat some S minuses on a regular basis. This horse is not necessarily one of those, or he hasn't proven that through the races so far. So I'm going to say this is a horse that at most I would run at an A minus level. More likely, I would be running this horse in the B plus level. So I'm gonna just completely cut the high A levels out of this and get rid of that and not have to worry about looking at those kinds of races. Then I'm going to get rid of yielding. Yes, this horse has won at yielding, but I don't really care about that, because most of the time he's really struggling when it comes to yielding tracks, yielding conditions, even at a stakes level. He came in 8th, 5th, and 5th there. He won in a yielding track up in an allowance B minus B plus race, but again, he's only run 2 of these. One was fast, one was yielding. We know he's not a fast horse, so that was absolutely the wrong race for this horse to be in. Yielding, he won there, and he also placed down here in a stakes race for yielding. But for me, I'm cutting all the yielding races because he's not a yielding horse. his 3 stars say that he's sloppy and soft, and that's where I really want to focus this horse's efforts. So for me, yielding is gone. I'm not going to look at any race that is going to potentially have a yielding condition. So what we're left with is, sort of the racer X analysis, which is his income is likely going to come at stakes levels in short distance, left turning on dirt in sloppy and soft conditions, which means 100% rain conditions, because that's going to be the best opportunity you're going to get for sloppy and soft. You might get a yielding in there, but most of the time, the great bulk of the time, you're going to get soft and sloppy conditions. So I only want to run this horse at a 100% rain condition, which means here is Racer X, his prototype race. For me, he's always going to only run 4 to 6 furlongs left in dirt, 100% rain only. And he's only going to run in stakes races that are B plus to A minus only. I might test him at handicap stakes 3-year-old plus, because he did well in the juvenile handicap stakes for 2-year-olds. Again, it was his prototype race, 6 furlongs, dirt left, and sloppy, and he did okay in the handicap stakes for juveniles. There is a step up between the juvenile races and the 3-year-old and beyond races. So there's not necessarily going to translate across from winning at the juvenile level to winning at the 3-year-old plus level. But I want to test him there, because at least he has shown some success in his prototype style. But for me, I'm going to start running this horse, at the short distances in B plus A minus only stakes races and in 100% rain conditions. And so the lesson here at the end for all of this is that you have to pull your horse apart to determine his style. And I mean, don't rely just on preferences. In this particular case, preferences are holding up for Racer X. In a lot of horses I've seen, preferences don't hold up. I've told you about a horse I have who theoretically likes a firm track. He hasn't won at firm track. He loves sloppy conditions, even though he's theoretically a firm track horse. So you pull apart your horse to understand his exact style, and pull apart the races to understand the specific type of race your horse has run in the past and where he has excelled and where he has failed. And by that I mean, don't just say it was an allowance race or it was a stakes race or a handicap race. Understand that it was an allowance A minus A plus, or it was a stakes B plus, etc. Know the exact race where he has done well and where he has not done well. And then weed through those races to understand and to home in on the exact races your horse excels at. So, not just a 4 to 6 furlong left dirt 0% rain, but it's 4 to 6 furlongs left dirt 0% rain, handicap stakes A plus only. So now you have really defined what your horse should run by pulling apart every single race that he has run and weeding through all of the races he's good at. He's a stakes race horse, let's say. You're weeding through all of the stakes races he has run in order to get rid of the races that really don't fit his style. Like I showed with Racer X, I'm not going to include a 10 furlong race in my assessment of him, because I am never ever going to run that horse at a 10 furlong pace, because it's just not his style. So go through and find the races that are exactly the style that your horse runs, and you can begin to build a stronger and better stable with horses who are more and more successful, because you've really pulled apart everything you can to hone in on that one specific prototype style race that's great for your horse. And with that, I will say, see you on the podium.